Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. My name is Andrew Claudio, a.k.a. GMAC, and it is time to preview another Knicks matchup, this time on Wednesday night in South Beach against the Miami Heat. They will travel down to one of the MSGs. There's like 7 of them. This one is MSG South Beach, and someone will be in attendance that you all know and love. Every time he comes on this pod, it's always a cute time. It's just such an awesome time to welcome on, especially when it's time to talk about the Knicks against the Miami Heat. From the Miami Heat feed, Giancarlo Navas. Giancarlo, my friend, how are you, sir?
You know what? We're okay.
We're okay.
There's a lot going on in the world. There's a lot of things coming up in November. A little on edge, but you know what? We're talking about silly things that don't matter as much as important things. And I'm here with a friend, and we're gonna have a good time. That's all that matters today. A good time.
We're gonna take a break from what's happening in the world. The most recent thing that happened at Madison Square Garden that we're gonna talk about is the Knicks game, and nothing else that happened at Madison Square Garden recently.
That was, you know what's funny? I was like, what other bad thing happened at Madison Square Garden other than the injury to Jalen Brunson? And then I was like, oh, right, that was
right. The injury to Josh Hart. That's what.
That's exactly what we mean, and nothing else.
Yes.
Did the Rangers lose as well?
Yes. So it's actually been a rough weekend.
I
for
saw
New York
that.
General. Yeah. The soccer team lost. The Yankees are down 3-0. The Mets were eliminated. The Knicks lost. The Giants stink. The Jets stink.
But you're a Mets fan.
This is I'm a Mets fan. Yes, I'm a Mets fan.
It's kind of like that. The Yankees are kind of like okay if they lose.
I'm trying my best to remain neutral. This is my political campaign.
The Dodgers are the most evil organization in baseball. Like the Dodgers make the Yankees look like upstanding, really punchy underdogs.
See, the tough part about that criticism is I want the Mets to become the Dodgers. So I don't know.
Well, you're on your way.
Listen, billionaire owner, if he goes reckless this offseason, I'll get my way.
You'll never be LA sports fans, and you'll always have.
I don't want to be. Exactly. I don't want to.
And you'll always have that.
Well, thank you, and I hope that we're off to a good start. No trash talk. No, we're cordial today. In fact, I wanted to start this with a compliment, Giancarlo, and we like to be very analytical and detailed here at Knicks Film School. Obviously, with the school theme that we go here, we try to teach here at KFS. And I really do feel this every time you come on here, you inform our listeners. It's not just vibes. It's not just narratives. It's informing. You know ball. You analyze the game at a very deep and intellectual and analytical level. I want to give you your props there. Which is why I wanted to start this with a little game. Okay? We're going to start this with a game called Giancarlo, Explain This. So
love that.
Ready? Yeah. Your first and only segment here, the only entry into this game. Giancarlo, explain this.
Brother, I don't got anything to say. I am going tomorrow to see it in person. I don't listen. We honor the greatest athlete in the history of our city. And Andrew, I've said this before. I mean, that guy walks on water here. I always use it. I was on BBC Radio today. Yes, that is a flex. And I told this story that after the Stoneman Douglas shooting, which is obviously of the highest order of tragedy that we face in this country, there was a young man in high school who was buried in Dwyane Wade, like a Dwyane Wade shirt.
Right.
That's a high school kid that wasn't alive, wasn't sentient in 2006 to know what being down 13 points in the fourth quarter, bound 0-2 against the Dirk Nowitzki Mavs, what that meant. And that's the impact that he had, that's what the family wanted, and that was his idol and what he meant. And that, by the way, Andrew, that's after he left to Chicago. So it's
right.
That guy means so much. And then he hits the game winner against Philly the day after that happens. He has the kid's name on his shoe. Literally, we're all crying in the stands because it's bigger than basketball. It's community. It is even in our hardest, most difficult moments, that guy is a beacon of light, of hope, of reverence, of a great man to look up to. And then
I was
they
about to
give
say,
us Lawrence Fishburne.
Yeah, I fully understand what Dwyane Wade means to Miami, what he means to that market.
What
They
do you mean to me?
renamed the street over there.
Oh, by the way, Andrew, Miami-Dade County does not rename streets after living people anymore. They did it once, and it was Jose Canseco. And then they said, never mind, because then after Jose Canseco did Jose Canseco thing, and they're like, we're never doing that again. And the exception was for Dwayne.
Right, Wade County. Exactly. Yeah.
Like, actually.
I understood it. Like, when it was announced last year he would get the statue. I was like, yeah, of course. That makes complete sense.
Why are his eyes so small?
I have no idea.
That's
I've gone back and forth between a zombie from I Am Legend, a cross between...
My Twitch chat said that yesterday.
Dom Toretto and The Rock all at once. That's what Sam Vecini said. Every single meme has been funny.
He looks like a Metal Gear Solid villain.
Yeah. Mr. Clean, Thanos, wherever you want to go with this. Giancarlo, what is this? And clearly nobody has an answer except Dwyane Wade, who, when you read about the behind the scenes, he was involved, right, in the sculpting of this. And since it was his approval, no one could tell him, hey, this doesn't look like you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and he seemed kind of sad that no one liked it, which made me sad. He was like, "Man, he's like that scene in Fresh Prince. Why they don't want me, Uncle Phil?
How come they don't want me, man?"
And I'm like, no. I was like, no. You're not it. What? No, wait. I don't want you to be sad.
It's like a respected director. Like, doesn't Francis Ford Coppola have a movie out right now that you want to be like, hey, I respect you and your career and your legacy, and you made this, and I appreciate that you put your heart and soul into it. It's not good. Like, at the end of the day, it's statue, and if I'm judging it based on statues, it's not a good statue.
And those statue people, they did the MJ statue,
yeah,
the Kobe and Gigi statue. They did, I believe, the Jerry West statue outside of the crypto. I keep calling it crypto. Staples. It's a crypto center. Like they got like the goats. They got
yep.
They got like the Dwyane Wade of statue makers, and what are you supposed to do? Like, I don't know. Like,
yeah. Well, I look forward to making fun of you for it for the foreseeable future.
But I'll say this, Andrew, and we can end with this. I mean, we all have jokes, but I mean, everyone's still going to take pictures. I'm going to the game tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. You have to own it now. You have to own it now.
That's my goat. That's my goat.
I'm going to take a picture in front of this ugly statue.
That's my goat.
Statue looks like in front of the kind of looks like Dwyane Wade statue.
That's my ugly Dwyane Wade statue. It's
exactly.
Ours. Yeah.
Well, if this isn't a good transition into the state of the Miami Heat, if you want to give a State of the Union at the moment, where I don't remember a time when expectations were lower from the basketball community as far as projecting the Miami Heat. The PTSD and the don't sleep on them still exist, at least for me. As far as, like, I was asked a bunch in some pregame crossovers before the year, like, how many teams can win the East? And I was like 5.5, because I'm never counting out the Miami Heat. And I just want to know from you, do you feel that half? Is it a full measure? Do you feel like the run is potentially over? Like, where are things currently going on with the Miami Heat?
I feel the half just because you have guys that have done it recently. Like, you have guys that have, like, proven it on the biggest stage, like Jimmy, Bam, Spo, right? And we can really just be like, Jimmy and Spo on the biggest of biggest stages, right? That you'd be like, okay, those guys, they're proven guys. I mean, Spo, arguably, I don't want to start a fire here, the best coach in the league, best coach in the East. In that conversation, at least, like,
who's
Miami,
disagreeing with that? What do you mean?
People say stuff. I don't know. Like, I think he's the best coach in the league.
So do I.
Yeah, right now, and there's a lot of really good coaches. I do think that, like, once you get, like, to a certain percentage of, like, percentile of coach, like, you maybe get 0.2% better because your guy has one extra thing in the oven or whatever. But he obviously gives you an advantage in every series. Jimmy's a guy that could be the best player on the floor in every series in the East. I know that because I've seen it. I've seen him do it against Tatum, against Giannis. I've seen this happen, right? And even listen, in that Knicks series that they won, Jalen Brunson was the best player on the floor, and Miami was still able to kind of get out of that, because of Spo, because of Bam, because of some of those role guys that are not here anymore. that stepped up. But I agree. Expectations are low. I think most fans kind of have the same thing of like, well, if we have a good season and we're in, we get the right kind of seeding, we can, I think the first round is probably the hardest one because, you kind of predict Miami to have a lower seed. And then once they get a little bit of momentum, okay, all bets are off. But I think we all kind of have them as a first or second round out. I think, that's optimistic. I think all these guys have aged. I think eventually you lose enough. I mean, Gabe Vincent's not here anymore. Kyle Lowry's not here anymore. Max Strus is not here anymore. Caleb Martin is not here anymore. All these guys that have super contributed to their playoff success, these rotation guys, PJ Tucker not here anymore. They're all Jay Crowder, like they're all gone. And this goes back to even 2020. And now you're left with a very young team. Like Jovic is starting for them, who's very green. You have Jaime Jaquez Jr., who's in his second year. You have, Khalil Ware, who's not really playing right now. You have Pell Larson, who, I think the Heat fans are hoping that he gets on the floor. There's a lot of inexperience on the team as well that, are they going to be ready for those moments? So I kind of agree with you. I think that there's a little bit of that. Hey, I've seen it, but also like probably not.
So the path seems to be, because you mentioned seeding, that their only path to experiencing that potential contention that I alluded to is another run like 2022, where it's like you get in, Jimmy gets hot, you play the Knicks, and like a different version of the Knicks. Because the Knicks are obviously a weaker 4 seed, if you want to call it.
And that was a Knicks team that was like the first time that group of guys had to like go through that.
Again, right. It would be like if you played the Magic in the second round and who aren't that battle tested.
That's actually a great analysis. The Magic are a little different because they're a little younger, and I think the Knicks had veterans.
No, Knicks were the youngest team in the league that year. They had just benched the vets and the Fourniers and the Derrick Rose, which that's what I kept going back to. That this was, to your point, the first year of them being together. The Quickleys, the RJs, the Grimeses, Brunson and Randall. Even they're all under 27.
Brunson and Randall have done it. Separately, right? And Brunson in a different role. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But that seems to be the path to a ceiling of like either a miracle run to the finals or a first or second round exit. Can I ask about the inverse of the other direction? And I just don't know what the
other way fast too. Yeah.
I just don't know what the other direction even looks like. Is there a blow it up button because of what the draft is this year? Is there tension between Riley and at this point in his career and what he wants and potentially going whale hunting still and what Jimmy might want when he's extension eligible? Like, where does things stand there?
Dude, they just never. When have they ever done that? Like, when do they ever do the?
They haven't, which is why I'm curious if it could go that direction.
When I say this because we've gone through this. I cannot remember a time that Riley has traded a player for a pick. Like that's not a salary dump to do something else, right? Like, when has he ever traded a guy for? When has the Heat ever gotten a first round pick in exchange for a player? Right? That's just not what they do, and that's not how they operate. That guy's old. That guy's not going to sit around for a rebuild. So I think whatever happens this offseason is a different conversation. Obviously Jimmy has not signed an extension. There's a lot of conversation about what's going to happen. And frankly, I don't know. We don't know. Who knows? I think both camps are reporting different things. I think sometimes on Jimmy camp, it seems like he's going to stay. Sometimes not, blah, blah, blah. I think that that energy is a little futile for us covering the team. That's for the front office to worry about. We have basketball on court stuff to worry about, but it could go south the other way quick. And I'll say this, they have, like I said, they have a lot of young guys that are not experienced. They overhauled the entire offense. And listen, they're a Bam ankle away from really just being a disaster defensively, because all those guys that they lost, Caleb, Max, Gabe, Lowry, those are all plus defenders. And Max is the worst of that bunch. And Max still was like guarding Jason Tatum in the conference finals and like staying alive. That was their quote unquote weak link, right? And their defense right now is a little bit of a mess. And I think Bam is just doing a lot defensively to just keep them alive. And I mean, they have depth in the sense of they have a lot of guys that are playable. They don't have a ton of guys that you're just like, that guy's not an NBA player, right? We know that there are some teams that are fielding guys at the end of the bench. You're just like, yeah, that guy's just really not ready for the pros yet. They don't have that, man. Like they're like 11th man is Alec Burke. You know what I mean? Like that guy was, contributing.
What's a Nick?
Yeah, dude, he was contributing in the playoffs last year. So that's kind of like where they're at, but they don't have top end depth. It's Jimmy, Bam, and a pretty sizable fall off to Hero, Rozier. And if Bam gets hurt or Jimmy gets hurt, they don't have a lot of answers. So that could go bad really quickly. And it could even go bad if they're healthy, if we're being honest. So there's a huge spectrum of variance as to what they could be this year.
Well, as we transition into the actual basketball of it all, we talk about this team as if they got off to this really rough 0-3 start, like it's a Nuggets kind of start where there's something glaringly awful, and yet they're 2-1, kind of the middle of the pack, both on offense and defense. If you care about net rating and offensive rating and defensive rating,
there are 2 wins against awful teams, against Charlotte.
Yeah, that's true. Detroit. But I did just watch the Cavs come in after 3 wins against Toronto, Detroit, and Washington, and look very impressive at the Garden on Monday. So I'm doing my best not to take those 2 heat wins for granted. However, I mean, you tell me what's different on the court that you're seeing this year from years past.
Offense, the way that they're getting their shots. So last year, they were one of the highest mid-range shooting teams in terms of attempts in the league. Their shot distribution came a lot in the mid-range and very, very low number at the rim. They were also really poor at mid-range shooting. They were also poor finishing at the rim. This year is a real effort to go 5 and out. Hey, let's get our threes up. So they are currently top 10 in threes, are 9th in threes, and at the rim they are 12th, right behind New York in shot distribution. And their mid-range, they are bottom 6, and New York top 5, right? So that's actually pretty interesting, and it kind of makes sense given kind of New York's roster. But I'm not a guy, Andrew, that really is anti mid-range. I think that I'm pro mid-range when Kevin Durant's taking them, when you have good mid-range shooters. I just don't think Miami had those guys. Like Bam and Jimmy are kind of mid-range shooters. Heroes are okay, pretty good to decent, stuff like that. So that has been the major thing in the offense. It's like, we're going to play 5 out. We're going to run way more high pick and roll. We're going to do fewer kind of handoffs. We're going to less motion stuff. I have liked that they've reintroduced some old things back into the Heat system, like hammer screens, like filling the corners, kind of movement in and out of those areas. I think a huge problem with their offense has been their spacing, where guys will roll off pick and roll or off kind of little slips or back cuts or whatever. And the guy on the weak side corner, his man's cheating almost in the paint, because they're just, nobody's concerned with Miami's kind of corner shooting. And I think that they realize, like, okay, man, if, Caleb Barton's going to beat us, and Caleb Barton's going to beat us. And I think they kind of realized that they had to kind of get one of those guys, one of those defenders out of the paint by having more movement in the corners, by empty corner and then filling the space, hammer screens, all those little things to kind of game and to kind of create motion, so that when the roller goes, there's no one coming to help. There's no tag. The help at the nail is really the only resistance that you have. And I think it's been mixed. I think in the preseason, it looked really good. I think in practice, it's been, I think the starting lineup has had a really bad start. It's like minus a ton with Niko Jovic, Rozier, Hero, Jimmy, and Bam. The bench units have been really good. And a lot of that has been their defense in terms of kind of getting out in transition. The starting unit has not, they have 2 minus defenders, 1 and defender in Jovic, and then Jimmy and Bam. So that's kind of what's different, right? Like, they've lost. I think losing Caleb, I think, is a huge blow to their defense, because they're playing Duncan Robinson, they're playing Kevin Love and or Thomas Bryant, they're playing Niko Jovic, Terry Rozier, Tyler Hero. All those guys are not plus defenders. And then now it's like Jimmy, Haywood Highsmith, and Bam are like, Alec Burke is not a plus defender either.
Right.
Like, so you're just like, you're kind of handcuffed. They're playing drop. These guys like Cade Cunningham was absolutely roasting everybody. They have to send late doubles and everything to kind of contain him. They're committed to playing drop. I think that, they try not to switch as much because they just don't want to get killed on the boards again, like they did a few years ago with all the switching. I just think, I don't know how the defense is going to kind of play out in the season. Spo is one to be middle of the season. Okay, forget it. We're doing something new. And then we retool it. But
how much zone are they playing? real quick. How much zone are they still
Not
playing?
a lot. And I'll tell you why. Their zone is really demanding. Their zone is not, oh, we have 3 bad defenders, let's hide them. Their zone is to hide 1 bad defender, right?
Yeah. That's what the Sixer game was. It was Hero just like keeping as far away as possible, which is why the adjustment was put Batum on that side. And when Batum is beating you just kind of live with it, you know?
You just kind of live with it. And they like their guards at the bottom of the zone because, they want to kind of if a team can like kind of break their little barrier to kind of get that penetration, then okay, you collapse totally, and then whatever you're forcing in rotation or whatever. But they don't have the size up front. They don't have the defenders up front to pressure the ball, to play their really demanding zone. So it hasn't just been. There's not really a place for it right now.
Yeah, and look, I recognize the difficulties of trying to go to a team that plays a lot of drop and prioritizes offense because you may have downgraded some of your defenders. Or really from the center position is where the Knicks find themselves now, is that we went from years of rim protection being the backbone and the identity of this team with Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein and even like a Nerlens Noel when you threw him in there. Even Precious Achiuwa last year showed himself serviceable. And now it's time to talk about the Knicks, Giancarlo, and what they've done recently. A guy that you've told me for years may be the Julius Randle trade. Guess what? The Knicks finally did it. They went and got Karl-Anthony Towns. So you liked it. So what was your reaction to just the Knicks summer? First the McHale trade and all the picks, and then the right before training camp trade for Karl-Anthony Towns.
As totally honest, you know that I'm a hater first and analyst second.
Mm-hmm.
The McHale trade happened, and I was like, man, that's a lot for Mikal Bridges, role player all-star team. That was my honest to God reaction. I was like, ooh, that's a lot of stuff for him. And I think they have to make another move for me to take them seriously. And credit to them, man. They made the other move. And I know I'm jumping ahead here, but
no, you're good. You're good.
Mikhail's a guy that Mikhail's a third, fourth guy. Right. And I think as the Knicks were constructed, he was kind of a second guy on offense. Third guy.
Even with Randall?
I guess. I just don't really. I got to be honest. I don't rate Randall. I think he's a good regular season player. And Knicks fans may get mad at me, but like I've seen it too often. And I know that he'll have good games. And I know he's an all NBA kind of level talent. And I mean, I like his game. I just think that there's just so much there that goes so bad so often that I don't think that that's something that you can reasonably rely on in the postseason time and time again. I think Mikal is actually a great stabilizer. I think we've seen that as his role of pretty much every team. He's like, I'm a really good player. I'm going to really be stable, consistent, keep the boat from rocking kind of guy.
Right. But now let's go to Cat, because you have that assessment of Randall, and I can't push back on any playoff evaluations of Julius Randle, one of the most inefficient playoff performers that we've ever seen.
Gets hurt a lot too, by the way. And there's like a lot.
I wonder what happened to him that he got hurt, Giancarlo. He stepped on Bam Adebayo's ankle. That's what happened.
I forgot. I was like,
as someone who
should I know this?
Someone who never forgets. I'm sure you haven't forgotten what happened to Jimmy, and I still get.
Yeah, Josh Hart's public enemy number 1 down here.
Well, guess where Bam is in New York? Ah! Okay, so you have that evaluation of Randall.
Yeah,
like, what about Cat? Isn't that is basically what I'm saying? I know there's this playoff series against the Nuggets where. He didn't shut Jokic down. He just defended him adequately enough so that way they could do all the other things with McDaniels and with Gobert in that series in Minnesota. So, like, what is it that about Cat that in your mind makes it an upgrade? I'm curious.
So let's talk about the good, and then we'll talk about the defense.
Yes, please.
I mean, listen, at one point I said he has the potential to be the greatest offensive big man in the history of basketball in terms of arsenal, right? Like, obviously, like Shaquille, Kareem, they were forces of nature. But, in terms of like having it all, like true, like I think we throw the word 3-level scorer out a lot. There's not a lot of guys that are actually like, I score at every level, at every spot of the floor. Cat's like one of those guys, right? And I think that him and Brunson, I think you have the diet of both of them. I think Jalen I have, Jalen's a guy that's really good, that kind of gets burrows in. It's really physical, kind of not afraid of the moment. I think he needed a little bit of help. I think too much kind of came on him a lot of times. And I think sometimes he had to take shots that are probably not within the scope of what he should be doing at that time, because they didn't have a lot of other things. And he's looking around. He's like, I got to do this. And listen, he will take that upon himself. But I think kind of adding a guy like Karl Towns, giving him the 2-man game, there's a lot that they can do together. Cat as a passer is really good. Obviously, the Knicks really needed another big man after losing Hartenstein, and I know that
Mitch is out. Yeah,
they have injuries and stuff like that. So kind of help solidify your biggest position of weakness, at least on offense. And you have Tibbs, right? So like you kind of hope it's like, okay, they're not the greatest defensive team, but you have probably the most, I would say the most famous modern defensive coach. Like if I think of a guy that like is known for defense, right? It's going to be him, Spo, and Frank. Gonna call him Frank Lampard. What's his name? Frank Vogel.
Oh, Vogel. Yeah.
I'm like, I mind blank, right? So you have like those guys that are like really, kind of really known for the defense. And I'm like, okay, well, you kind of trust him to figure it out with kind of guys like Hart, like Bridges, and I think Jalen competes. I don't think he's the best defender, but I think he does there's a lot of courage there. Right. So, I just thought that made their offense make sense. That was always my thing. It's like, can the Knicks score enough? Like when they really, really need to put points up, can they find enough points? And to me, that answer was always no. You can check the tape of your pod. I'd always said that. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to your audience and say like, oh, I'm going to be a hater. Like, no, that's the trade.
Real.
And by the way, they got him that was a steal for them.
You really think so? Even the DiVincenzo of it all?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't want to be there, man. If people don't want to be there,
oh, he did. So I don't know what you've heard.
Wasn't differently. The thing? It's like he didn't like his role or whatever.
There's multiple reports out there, and I'm happy to clarify if you'd like. So the night that the trade happened, a report from random person on Twitter, like not Woj, not Insider. Well, I guess the Woj isn't reporting anything anymore.
Centel?
It basically was a Centel, but from random person on Twitter, was that DiVincenzo didn't like his role, like wasn't thrilled about the Villanova thing, was like annoyed that he had to go to the bench. Then a week later, the Knicks play the Timberwolves in the preseason, and he refutes all of it. And then he gets into it with Rick Brunson and Tibbs. Now, he didn't say anything like, thanks for trading me. But I
remember that clip. Yeah.
There was a clear animosity where he was like joking around with Tibbs, and Rick Brunson shouted something. And he went back. He was like, hey, this is what happens. This is what they let you run the show.
Yeah.
And then they got into it in the post game. He very clearly did not want to be traded. And then there's a GQ expose on the 4 Villanova guys that was supposed to come out right around media day, that then had to be reworked because it now featured a former Knick in the middle of the expose. So they were all very into the 4 Villanova guys playing together.
Yeah.
Which is why I think the DiVincenzo of it all actually makes it a different calculation. You had a guy that
I still don't, by the way,
proven battle tested, was proven to be like part of the quote unquote culture they were building for whatever you buy into that. But if you're in your mind, like it was a worthy upgrade.
It's a role guy.
Get a center like this,
It's a role guy at best, 5th starter.
Mm-hmm.
And was it a pick, a first and a second, or just 2 seconds?
It was a first, and it was a Detroit protected first that is like protected for the next 3 years. Yeah.
So I'm like, you trade a 5th starter for like a 1A guy, right?
Yeah.
Like a he can make the Hall of Fame kind of talent. You know what I mean? And when you do that for that, I mean, listen, you can find another DiVincenzo, right? Like I know because I've seen the Heat pull. Here's Gabe Vincent. Here's Tucker Robinson. Here's Max Strus. Here's they just fucking find these guys and not.
Hold on, Giancarlo. I've been making this joke all summer that the Heat, like it's so funny. I'm talking to someone about the Miami Heat finding guys where it's like if they lose someone, like oh no, they lost Max Strus and Caleb Martin. They're just gonna go like to
Caleb
South
Martin was
Beach.
another guy they found. He was on
They'll find a waiter or a lifeguard or a Publix cashier, and it's like, oh, did you used to play basketball? I'm gonna turn you into a Sixth Man of the Year candidate. Like,
dude, literally,
that's Heat culture to me.
It's, I'm sure it's so annoying, but like, I think that a lot of teams can better use the G League and they can replicate that. And I really do think that one thing that Heat do really well that I think other teams can kind of mimic is I think these guys come in and they have, I think one thing, everybody at the Heat have job security. Like, Spo's not going to get fired for playing a guy, and Riley's not going to get fired for taking a chance on a guy. So they have some of that flexibility that I understand that most teams don't have. But like, they just keep guys around. Like, Gabe Vincent was here for like 2 years, didn't play, and then came in. I was like, oh, he's pretty good. Duncan Robinson, same thing. Max Drew, same thing. You just got to keep a guy around. Listen, Drew Smith is a guy. He has stuck around for a couple of years. Not that he's going to be like this great player, but that's a I don't know. I think he can really contribute this year. I think like he's really solid defensively. I could see more of him. I wouldn't be surprised if Brunson were to play that they would kind of try him out there defensively because he's so, he competes. He's really good. So like, I think teams can find guys. You obviously may not get, I may get to 80% of DiVincenzo, but 80% of DiVincenzo plus Cat, even 70% of DiVincenzo plus Cat is just worth it. You know what I mean? It's like you get the superstar in the door and you solve the rest later. And I just think that's always worked in the NBA. It's at least gotten you good. Because I think we just see time and time. Look at Dallas. Dallas is like short a guy. Like teams, Miami's always been short a guy. Like 2 finals, they run out of gas. Like, so Boston had to go get the other guy to win. Well,
this is where how that guy becomes available means that your organization also needs to be opportunistic. Like, I look at what the Knicks found with Deuce McBride, and like, this is a 2nd round pick that, to your point, they just put in their development program, was lighting up the G League. And then they make their first consolidation trade last year. And it's like, how do you trade Emmanuel quickly? Like, runner up for 6th Man of the Year. Everybody's calling for him to start. And then Deuce enters the rotation. And it's like, oh, this is kind of exactly what you needed, So there's that example there. Where they get that next guy is going to be fascinating because they did. So you're going to see a guy named Ariel Hukporti in the Knicks rotation.
You made that
on Wednesday night. Was the last pick in the most recent NBA draft that I'm sure was rated as like the worst NBA draft to exist. Like, Bronny James went 2 picks before him, and he's like a solid backup big man that's already taken minutes from Jericho Sims, and to the extent where I think if you like, and this is to your point about the development program, you put him these big guys in the Tibbs system and you get like the upgrade that you got from, or I guess the upgrade in performance that you got from Precious Achiuwa, you're excited about what he could potentially be in this team, in this culture. So,
I think that they're a guy, like a role guy or 2 away. They are. That's where like keeping DiVincenzo would help. Cause like you kind of look at their rotation and I think we can like make them analogous to an extent to the 2019 Raptors that won the title. Not a very deep team. They played 7 guys, right? It was Van Vliet and it was Ibaka off the bench. And that was really their rotation with the other guys. I think the Knicks are kind of similar. They got Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, and then a bunch of guys that, McBride, Payne, like, top, Shua. Like, who do you really trust?
Right now, it's a top 6 is what I'd say. And then it's a center. Like, Campaign's in the rotation right now.
Who's the 6th guy?
Deuce McBride would be your 6th.
Yeah. So it's like, I know, like, not to like, not to be like mean or anything, but like those 6 guys are not as good as the Raptor 6 guys, right?
No, of course not.
And obviously you're not playing a Golden State, but like, you gotta get past one. So like, I think gotta upgrade Josh Hart. Not that he's a bad player, but I think we've seen, kind of some of the spacing issues that comes up. And I think him bolstering your bench makes sense. And then kind of getting a guy in the starting lineup that kind of helped your spacing a little bit, guy also defends. I think that's important. Getting more plus defenders. I think that's kind of like what New York can do kind of from now until the deadline and the buyout market to kind of get them in a place to be like, okay, like we're like championship ready. I think they're very close. I think they're very close.
Do you think they're very close, but not contenders in your mind?
I think like right now they're probably like, I mean, they're going to be competing for like a top 3 seed in the East. I think like it's going to be like a 3 of like Milwaukee, Philly, them. I mean, they're really going to play for second place. I don't really see Boston relinquishing kind of the number 1 seed. They kept everybody. They're really good. They're proven, right? So Milwaukee's a little bit out of sorts. Joel Embiid is under some sort of investigation, which, by the way, I think we got to get our top agents on the case.
Mm-hmm.
President Biden, send whoever you got. We got to get to the bottom of this. I don't know. Just let's solve this case, guys.
Yeah.
So
but that'll come up in a second. The Joel Embiid thing, but look to wrap up.
I think they're close though. I think that
they're close. Okay.
I think they're close. Like I think that. I mean, they could be the 2 seed. You know what I mean? Like,
I gotta say though, like to hear they're close after they've made 2 all-in trades this summer is a bit concerning if you're a Knicks fan, right? Because
I think they gave too much for Bridges, which is like
I don't think they had a choice. They had,
I know.
It's the Nets thing of it all. Like
extortion, man.
But
do you disagree with me?
Reality.
Like, do you like?
They didn't give up any players that I cared about in the trade.
It's just the pick. It's like you just need.
So remember during the season when they had made the OG Anunoby trade and they had made the trade for the 2 Pistons, right? And you messaged me, have the Knicks given up a pick yet? A first-round pick yet?
Yeah, dude, that was crazy. I was so mad.
Well, that's why you hold your picks, because you may need to have. I think the way I've framed it is that they've made 4 trades in the last year and given up 5 picks.
Do you think that as presently constructed with no more moves, you think that they're like, let's just say a fringe move? Do you think that they're like ready to win the title over teams like Boston, Denver, Minnesota?
The Boston calculation is tough because I think Boston may have just created like an unstoppable thing, and you're going to need some injury luck. Like that's I think the direction. If you're talking about the Raptors as like a model of you have 7 guys, you want to talk about some injury luck when you're beating a Raptors team but when you're beating a Warriors team where KD plays like half a game in the series, and Clay in the middle of a heater goes down in game 6.
I'll defend the North. Kawhi was on 1 leg and Lowry had a busted hand, but I agree.
Fine. Like you see my point though. It's like you need some injury luck to beat these all-time great teams.
For sure. And that's why you keep it together. Yeah. Like you don't, you always try to do when a move's available, you do it because you want to. I mean, look at Miami. I mean, Miami has a team that, just Giannis got hurt and they seized it, bro. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's not pretend like I'm not under any false delusion. They won the games that Giannis played too, but I'm under no delusion that was kind of fortunate for them, and they seized the moment and they got momentum and then they got confidence, and you know what that team can do with confidence. So, that's why I said they can win, right? Like or they can make the finals or something. Would I bet on that? No, I think that they need 2 more things, and I don't think anything I said is wrong. I do think that they need a little bit more defense. Maybe you can never have too much shooting, and kind of fill
you really upgrade the Josh Hart spot though. Like you don't think Josh Hart could start like he's a playoff hero in New York.
I don't know. I think that the kind of the spacing stuff hurts.
So what about Deuce McBride in for Josh, and then Josh goes to the bench? Just Deuce shot 40% from 3 last year.
Can Deuce defend at that level? Can he?
No, he can't. Which is the tough part that you're alluding to is that like they're out of assets, and I don't know where you're getting it. Like every team needs a 3.
No, and that's why I say it. It's I think you'd like to upgrade like Hart, and that's why I think if you do upgrade Hart to like a real like 5th starter, right? Because I mean Brunson, Bridges, and Anunoby, Towns, Hart's that 5th starter. If you get like I've always looked at Hart as more of a 6th man. I think in this league, and I would say that about anybody on the Heat too, right? Like I think that one of the things that's held them back is that a lot of these guys don't shoot, and I think that I've seen it that just cramps your spacing. It makes you easy to defend and leverage situations. I've just seen it. I know how that looks like, and a lot like unless you have LeBron James, Dwyane Wade, Chris Bosh level talent, it's hard to overcome kind of those things with modern defenses. Defenses are so good now; they're so ornate. They're so prepared. They know what to do, man. And your little screens and cuts, and that can only get you so far. You got to fucking hoop. Can you shoot? Can you beat a man off the dribble? Can you do things off ball? It's hard to win a title. You got to be Boston, man. All those guys can do those things. In Denver, A lot of those guys can do that. And I know Denver lost a lot of guys, but that's my thing. I think that if we're talking about like, oh, can they get lucky? I mean, Philly can get lucky, right? Like Milwaukee can get lucky. Like a lot of teams can get lucky, but I like,
but as
are they like
constructed? Yeah. And I don't even,
but I don't even
like push. Well, so I agree that I think they're going to be really good. I think it's funny. The first conversation we ever had, the infamous, actually might have been the second conversation we ever had, the infamous Cute podcast where you called the Knicks regular season in 2022 cute. And we were just like happy to enjoy it that year.
I was right. If we're being honest.
A cute basketball player finished 5th in MVP last year. So I don't know how cute Jalen Brunson was. But the reality is that back then expectations were different. And that's been a theme on these pregame pods so far, is that the Knicks went from like, we're just happy to be here. At least this fan base went from we're just happy to be here to exactly what you're talking about. I think they could win a ton of regular season games with Josh Hart as their 5th starter.
I agree. I'm talking about like playoffs.
It's a finals. It's a Boston conversation, and you're going to need to go 5 out. You're going to need to go match them 3 for 3.
I think it's a Philly and Milwaukee conversation.
Man, this can just lead right into the next segment of villains. I'm not buying Philly. I'm just not.
I buy Philly ever, by the way. I want to make.
I'm not buying Milwaukee either. Cleveland right now might be my the biggest threat to the Knicks being a 2 seed at this point for me. Like Cleveland looks really good. Mobley looks like he's taking a leap.
I don't believe.
Like Atkinson has them playing 5 out. Like, I don't believe in them. You don't believe in Cleveland?
Nope.
So who is it outside of? So you believe in Philly more than Cleveland? Because of talent.
Yeah, man, it's like, I don't know. I'm just kind of unmoved. I guess like I'm just unmoved. Like, and I think if you're going to be kind of a Cleveland, like who's their second guy, and I hate to kind of distill basketball to who's the second guy, but if you're Donovan Mitchell better be like, and I think it's hard to affect the game as a guard like that, unless you're like a shooter or a guy that just like gets 12 free throws, right? Like I think Harden and Curry are good examples of like guards that can control the game like that, because by getting free throws and by shooting threes, you absolutely manipulate the calculus on the floor in a lot of different ways. Mitchell can't get to the line. Can he do that at a Harden level? I don't know. Certainly can't defend. Neither could Harden. And Cleveland's gonna defend, and they have size. They have a lot of things that work their way. Is Garland kind of that guy? I have questions about their defensive backcourt. There's a lot of things. I think they're a good team. I think they're there's one of those teams that's going to be fighting for a home seed in the playoffs. Do I believe in them? No. I think again, that's like a team that I think can top out at the second round. They could be like a Portland that gets to a conference finals. If they have a thrilling 7-game series in round 2 and like, somebody makes it out barely alive type situation. I mean, really, like the East right now feels like the LeBron Cavs days.
It does. But I think that's
with more talent, because like
better teams also
with better teams, but it's clearly like one team is just a lot better than these other teams. And these other teams are really playing for second place. And it feels that way. And I hate to admit that because I hate all these teams. Boston especially, but that's what it feels
that's like. The one that's tough, and that I think is what makes the whole conversation tough, is that like I think I believe in Cleveland like 1% more than you do. I agree they're not beating Boston. I believe in the Knicks to an extent, but I also want to see what they're trying to beat. I pick
New York
Boston
over Cleveland. I think
I would too. I think last night through some not necessarily doubt
Philly over Cleveland, although I have negative respect for Embiid, but Embiid.
So this leads perfectly into the last conversation we're going to have. The Mount Rushmore of rivals. Every year I ask everybody a Mount Rushmore question. And this year I'm asking about your Mount Rushmore of villains, the 4 players that you, or figures or coaches, whatever you want to be, that you sports hate the most. And maybe you personally, or if you want to do it from the perspective of what Miami Heat fans hate the most. And I think we have to come to a moment of kumbaya, because you mentioned that Josh Hart is public enemy number 1, right? Was in Miami. I've gotten into it with many a member of the Miami Heat Twitter mafia. Hi, Alf. Good to see you. About Bam Adebayo and the fact that he's never set a legal screen in his life. Okay. Where we share a hatred now is that I went through a playoff series against Joel Embiid last year.
He's so
and
annoying, bro.
He's annoying. He's actually like, there is a player on the Knicks payroll right now that is currently not playing games right now because Joel Embiid injured him in the playoffs last year.
So
the elbows, the eye pokes, the you name it, he's done it. The dirtiness of Joel Embiid was on full display in that series to the point where anybody else is probably ejected. So I've heard you slander the man's name before. Giancarlo, the floor is yours.
Claudio, I don't think that Josh Hart was trying to hurt Jimmy Butler. I think Josh Hart was trying to get a call and was a little reckless and hurt Jimmy Butler.
Agreed.
I think Joel Embiid's actually trying to hurt people. Call me crazy.
You're not. You're on the right audience. You're not
is that irresponsible for me to say on the air? I don't know. I have watched a lot of basketball. I watched the way he falls. I've seen him fall on guys, wrap legs. There was that one clip where he pulled a guy. I just think that guy's just trying to hurt people. I don't. That's my only. There's a lot of evidence. That's my only interpretation of that. That guy is trying to hurt people. I don't understand why he has friends in the league. He complains. He's annoying. He cries to the media. Why don't you guys love me and give me MVP? What? Who does that, bro? You're right. They don't like you. They don't like you. They don't, because you're annoying and you're corny and you've never won. And literally everybody gets blamed except for big fella, bro. Everybody. It's Ben Simmons. It's Doc Rivers. Paul George. You're up, baby. Guess what? Meat shield time. Blame the fucking MVP, bro. Blame the alleged MVP that didn't deserve it, by the way. They
I've come around on that. I picked them that year, and I'm now like, no, I wish he never had one. I wish he never had one.
Bro, because he cried, and crying works. And they just, they were bored of giving it to Jokic. Giannis probably could have also won it that year as well. Like, so I'm sick of that dude. I don't like him. I think he's genuinely bad for the sport. I think he's corny. I hate that Jimmy's friends with him. I hate that Kyle Lowry's playing with him. I miss him so much. He just ruins. I once saw a tweet, Andrew, that said, whenever I see a Cybertruck, it ruins my day. That's how I feel about Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is my Cybertruck. I see him and my day's instantly ruined. I also hate Cybertrucks, and those also ruin my day. But yeah, so that's what I think.
Well done. Well done. Bravo, sir. That sound you hear is the large Knicks Film School audience applauding you right now. Who are the three? Like in Heat history, who's your
in history?
Yeah. Well, LeBron has to be one of them. Well, so the Celtics, that's a team. Like, give me a player.
You want individuals?
Yeah.
Might be Garnett. No, okay. Garnett or Pierce. No, maybe Pierce. I think Pierce post career. I think it would have been Garnett during like playing career, but I think the post career stuff with Pierce.
Yeah,
I think it's probably Pierce.
For those who don't know, he and Haslam have gotten into it in the podcast wars.
Yeah,
lately, to the point where I'm waiting to actually hear the report that there was a fight, like at Summer League or at All Star Weekend.
I mean, Garnett and Haslam actually did fight.
Right, but I'm saying now as adults, in their 40s.
Well, now it's Pierce, who would have never done that on the court. He let Garnett.
Right.
Garnett was the one doing that. Pierce was a little chicken to do that. So I think for sure Pierce. Man, that's tough. I think those two for sure. I think the 90s Knicks, man. And to find out, I don't know if it's because I don't think it was just Ewing or if it was like anything, if it was Jeff or whatever. But I just think the 90s. I know that you said individuals, but that's just such an important that was like the first time the Heat were ever important. Right.
So that's where if you ask a Knicks fan, the figure they go to, if it's not,
it's Riley.
It's either PJ. Well, so if it's not PJ Brown or Zoe, it's Riley. Because of
I would have assumed Riley for the. Yeah, I think Pat the Rat.
So the complicated part about Riley and Pat the Rat forever, right here in New York. But shout out to Chris Herring, his really good book chronicles it perfectly.
Goat, man.
Yeah, the Knicks kind of screwed that up. Give him what he wants, and he doesn't resign. And maybe this dynasty that you see the Heat have had, or at least whatever the last 25 years of success have been in Miami, maybe it happens in New York instead. But they had a power struggle with him and lost, and he took his talents to South Beach instead.
I'll say this, Andrew, and I don't even think you'll disagree with me. I don't think that would have been replicated in New York because of ownership.
So fair, especially if Dolan was right around the corner from there. Like Dolan wasn't in the picture when Pat was there. So maybe he leaves when Dolan shows up like Van Gundy did. The only pushback I'll give is that the last 10 years, Dolan's been largely absent. And especially the last 5 years where Leon Rose has just been allowed to run the show. Like, it does seem like there would have been a world where Pat could just be the guy that's in charge of everything. And I Dolan think that would just sign the check.
Dolan had to learn a lesson to get there.
Would have taken a decade. Yeah, which is what eventually did happen. I will say, though, the Rangers just don't lose. Like, there's a hockey element to this too, where he put someone in charge of the Rangers for a decade and a half, and they made the playoffs 15 out of 17 years.
Yeah. Who's to say with the, I mean, obviously different city, different media, a lot of different things, but who knows? But those are four. And I don't know, it might just be another Celtic too. It might be, I would have said Dirk, but I think post playing career, I think Dirk has really kind of endeared himself to Miami. It's hard, man. I don't even know what the fourth is as like an individual, because it's not like, I mean, Tatum is not really liked here. Mm-hmm. Obviously Josh Hart, as we said, but that's like a smaller thing as well. Like, I think like hating a role player is a little bit whack, at the end of the day. Like,
well, Jaime Jaquez was probably going to be number one for a little bit last year too.
Brad Stevens is a guy that I don't think people like, especially because he got a lot of Spo comparisons, stuff like that. So I think one of those guys. I also think saying Brad Stevens is a little whack.
There's a name you haven't said yet that I'm surprised about.
I might have forgot. Please,
LeBron.
I don't know.
He's still beloved, even though he left.
Bro, I don't know if I'd say beloved. I certainly wouldn't say hated at Mount Rushmore. I think it's a complicated relationship where, like, I mean, people still go to games in LeBron jerseys. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like there was a public burning of his jersey. I think people are mad that he left. And I think that in retrospect, people are like, I guess I understand. But it felt dirty the way he left. And I've talked about it a lot. It's not that poisoned. I mean, they're still going to retire his jersey. I don't think he'll get a statue here, but for sure he'll have a jersey retirement. He'll be celebrated. He'll be lauded whenever his career is over. Whether Riley's here to do that or not is a different story, but I know that they will. Man, I don't think it's LeBron. Embiid's another guy who I think's in that conversation, as well. So they've had a lot of modern kind of rivalries, but it was like it's against Indiana, right? Where it's like, like David West and Roy Hibbert were like the guys that nobody liked. It's Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah, but that just feels so far away. It's a big three Celtics. It's the Celtics. It's Embiid. I think Embiid is kind of good because I think that there is like a culture versus process kind of rivalry that's more, kind of like a contrast in styles where like the Sixers were like losing on purpose and the Heat never lost on purpose. Right? The Heat were like, we will hold 6, we will go forward, we will hold W, and we will like do what we can to stay good. And the Sixers are like, nah, Hinkie, we're going to lose for 5 years and we're going to build this way. And I think that kind of mesh and clash in style, I think is really interesting. And I think that's why like the fan bases bump heads a lot. And I think the organization kind of views them a certain way. I mean, even the players, Jimmy Butler, Tobias Harris over me type shit. So yeah, kind of one of those guys. Not a great answer because I didn't have 4 prepared for you, but I hope I gave you a good...
You gave me a good canvas of what the villains look like. My very last question, because I know you got.
Dan Dawkins, that guy who said Eric Spoelstra is not as good as Nate McMillan on a summer league broadcast. Fuck him.
I have no idea who that is, Beadle. But he's wrong. Yeah,
Michelle Beadle, Stephen A. Smith. We have a lot of enemies.
There's
in the media. John Barry, Mike Wilbon. F you, Mike Wilbon. Actually, Mike Wilbon. Sick of that guy, bro.
How far do I guess what's the age cutoff for someone to have Allen Houston? As a villain because of the shot he hit in 99.
Yeah, I don't know. 99. I mean, I'm 31. You know what I mean?
Does that shot mean anything to you?
Not really. Also, like there's generation, right? Because like I mean, and I don't know if I've said this on your show. It's like I think myself, like my generation, like these millennial Miami kids, especially like us Hispanics, we didn't grow up watching basketball. So our parents didn't know basketball. My dad's Colombian.
Okay.
Think my dad's ever watched a basketball in his life? of course not. He didn't know who these people were. My dad's like trying to work and does, he's not watching basketball. We watch soccer. In my house, we watch El Pibe. So when Dwyane Wade rose, that kind of made my generation pay attention. Also, basketball was cool, right? Like basketball in like the 2000s was cool, right? It was like, I think hip hop had really taken off with like Latino kids. And like, we were like watching the NBA, these rappers are referencing like these players, and I think it was just like a cool young thing, like rock and roll wasn't as much of a thing, right? It was like, what things have social equity that are cool? And that was one of them. The NBA was like cool, bro. The NBA was cool, and Dwyane Wade was spectacular. So like he kind of bridged that generation. So there's like I didn't watch those games, right? I'm 31, right? In 99, how old was I? I was 6, 7, whatever.
Yeah, you know better than I would. I'm bad at math. Yeah.
So
that's the inception.
There are certain
fandom,
people that will say Allen Houston, but I do think putting a role player there is whack.
That's the inception of my Knicks fandom is the Allen Houston shot. Like I was a basketball fan. I was a Michael Jordan fan because he helped save the Looney Tunes. And then when he retired and the NBA came out of that lockout, that 99 run is why. That's why I'm curious where it ranks for you or in Heat lore, because it's pretty high for me at least, and as far as that's concerned. But I know you've read the Sedano expose about his dad and how that 06 finals and what that meant to him and his dad. It's why it's a perfect culmination of this pod that we begin talking about Dwyane Wade and what he means, and we end talking about Dwyane Wade and what he means. And I can't wait for you to go to the Kaseya Center tomorrow and see what he means culminated in a statue that looks nothing like him.
That looks like Lawrence Fishburne.
Exactly.
Shout out to Lawrence. Shout out to Doc Rivers. We did
shout out to Larry Fishburne.
By the way, that was it a Hulu show or whatever where they casted Lawrence Fishburne as Doc Rivers? Was it a Hulu show and Netflix?
Oh my gosh, the Clippers show. Dude, I watched every episode. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
I know, but
as Donald Sterling.
But Lawrence Fishburne as Doc Rivers.
It's
phenomenal.
Playing Chris Paul. The dude playing JJ Redick.
That's what it's all about. Baby.
Yeah. It's one of the best dumb shows I've ever watched. Like none of it was good, and I enjoyed every second of it.
American
clip
television,
is what it's
baby.
called.
American television, right there.
Yes, indeed. Giancarlo, you're the best. I think we actually found some common ground too, to the point where I think Knicks fans are going to leave this being like, you know what?
Your audience is really nice to me. Your audience,
I hope so. They know you know ball.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, I think they get it. They get that when I'm being a hater, they lean into it and they come at me. I think everyone's respectful and we have fun and we talk smack. And I think everyone's just really nice. And sometimes they'll be like, "Man, I hate you," but at least you know what you're talking about. But I still hate your stupid guts. It's a lot of fun. I actually really, really love your audience. They're like really, really fun. So shout out to you guys. You guys are the
Thank you. Well, tell us where our audience can find you and all the stuff that you do over at the Miami Heat Beat.
Find me at GNavas103. That is GNAVAS 103 on Twitter. You can also find the pod on at MIA Heatbeat on Twitter, or catch us live on Twitch, twitch.tv/Miami Heatbeat, or watch us on YouTube if you can't make it. It is a lot of fun. And I do say this, like, I think opposing fans always have a good time when they come in, because like we'll roast. If the Heat lose, we're going to roast our own players. We've been calling the bench unit that is featuring a lot of Thomas Bryant. We call it TB. Thomas Bryant or tuberculosis, because that's what it feels like. Some of those bench units that are really bad. So we roast our own team. We have a good time. Stop by, have fun. Just don't be mean. Don't say mean things about people, and we'll all have fun.
Yeah, Alf. Don't say mean things.
Oh, I was thinking like slurs and stuff, but don't be.
Of course, yes.
Don't be Alf.
So fun last year after the Bam Adebayo gate that happened during the game, and I'm getting quote tweeted being like, "Get laid, bro."
I love you guys.
What I do? I'm saying Bam's a dirty player.
How is that about screen setting? Come on, guys.
Again, the bar has been raised to Joel Embiid. I don't hate Bam as much anymore. We have common ground as we leave this.
We're so back.
Indeed. Giancarlo, as always, it's good to see you, my friend. And everybody, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Knicks Film School pregame show. If you dig the show, head over to iTunes, drop a 5-star rating and review. If you're watching on YouTube, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel. I will be back on Friday to preview the Knicks matchup against the Detroit Pistons. But until next time, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the game tonight, and I will speak with you soon. Hold on a second. I know you have to run in like a minute, but Giancarlo just let me know tomorrow's his birthday. So today, as you're listening, is his birthday. On behalf of Knicks Film School, Giancarlo, happy birthday.
If the Heat lose on my birthday to the Knicks, I'm not happy birthday. I'm deactivating.
Deactivating. Okay.
I can't take
I wish you a happy birthday and awful birthday night. How's that?
Okay, we take this.
Later, brother.
Take care, my friend.